The Boy and the Heron was my most anticipated movie of the year, and that's because one, I absolutely adore Studio Ghibli, and two, Hayao Miyazaki is unquestionably my favorite director and probably just my favorite artist for that matter. I think the man has made masterpiece after masterpiece, and something about his style as an artist just clicks with me on every level. I really try to not have expectations going into any film, but this had to be an exception. I knew it would be great. I was certain that I'd love it, and I did. I suppose I'll start with the lead character, Mahito. It's often the case in a Ghibli film that the protagonist is an innocent young child who gets swept up in some sort of small-scale drama centering around their day-to-day lives. Their stories are usually a little funny and very sweet, and I love those types of movies that the studio makes, the slice-of-life films as we all call them. But that is not what this is, and that is absolutely not the story of Mahito. Mahito's life has always been on fire. He was born in it, and he was forged by it. From the very moment the film starts, we see him literally running into flames, trying to save someone. He has no fear. I'll slightly spoil something by saying we never see him act afraid of anything. He is chock full of grit and determination and resourcefulness and all the other courageous attributes a hero should have. And there's something about his age that also has to be noted. He's 12. He's a kid. He's a little kid. And yet we see him choose to bash and bloody his own head with a rock. We see him willfully walk into traps. People around him have to try and physically stop him from going on an incredibly dangerous adventure. Which brings me to the next aspect of the film I want to touch on, and that's the story. Now, I'll never intentionally spoil a movie, and sometimes I think even just talking about the plot can give away more information than necessary, so I highly recommend going in as blind as you can. But what I will say about the story itself is that it is a bizarre odyssey. The world and the creatures are as colorful and as mesmerizing as they are terrifying and confusing, especially in the second half of the film. Don't expect to fully understand what is going on during the last hour or so. Just sit back and take it all in. And I think when you put it all together, what you get is a movie that is as imaginative and creative as anything the studio has ever made. I mean, the lurking sense of danger and violence reminded me of Princess Mononoke. The color palette and the feeling that there's magic around every corner made me think of Howl's Moving Castle. And there are so many different aspects of the film that felt like Spirited Away. The two protagonists felt like they were spiritual twins to one another, where Chihiro began as a little more hesitant and timid, Mahito was bold and fearless. Where Chihiro was reluctant and scared of her world, Mahito was hellbent on entering his. So on one hand, these two characters seem to me like perfect foils for one another, but on the other hand, they seem so similar. They both find themselves in treacherous worlds that are completely indifferent to the fact that they're children. They both refuse to leave without first saving others, and in their perilous dream worlds, what ultimately guides these two young characters are their unwavering morals, the same set of morals that made them heroes in the first place. I have no idea what exactly inspired Miyazaki to make this movie, but I choose to believe that it is in some way a spiritual companion to the rest of his work. Before I finish this video, I just want to take a second and talk about Miyazaki. The man's career is over 40 years long at this point, and his work is one of a kind. His movies mean the world to me and so many others. This year, I was able to see a Studio Ghibli film in a theater for the first time when I went and saw Kiki's Delivery Service. and it was absolutely surreal. I felt so lucky being able to finally experience one of these movies on the big screen. And then shortly after that, I saw Princess Mononoke, and then Howl's Moving Castle, and then Spirited Away. And during every one of those movies, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a special experience, something I had to be grateful for. But watching this was something completely different. Getting to experience a new Hayao Miyazaki film in 2023 in a theater on opening weekend, that's probably a once-in-a-lifetime moment for me. I don't want to jinx anything, but Miyazaki is an 82-year-old man. Before this, he hadn't made a movie in 10 years. So trust me, I hope I'm wrong, but pretty much everything points towards this most likely being his last film. And if this really is the last movie we get from him, I'm more than okay with that. It's bittersweet knowing that this is probably the end of an era, but I can wholeheartedly say that the greatest filmmaker of all time went out with a passionate and fiery bang.